I'm Adam Pritchard, and this is Pastime. Reporting to you again from the Ruth Hall Museum of Paleontology here at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, where the field season's been going for about a week and a half. We've got easily upwards of 400 fossils cataloged and collected so far, so the season's going great, and it shows no signs of slowing down. I just wanted to share some of the more impressive finds, at least in my opinion, from the season, and also some of the most common things you'd find in the Hayden Quarry in terms of the fossils of reptiles. For example, this conical object, about as wide across as a pen, is a tooth from a phytosaur, the crocodile-like animal with its nostrils on the top of its head that I mentioned in the last episode, where I talked about how it probably created those coprolites, those fossil feces that I showed at that point. Now, phytosaurs, unlike mammals, like you and I, generate teeth at an incredible rate. They don't just have one or two sets of teeth throughout their lives, they literally just keep replacing them all throughout their lives until they're dead. And as a result, you get tons and tons of these little teeth throughout the Hayden Quarry. They vary greatly in size throughout the jaw of the animal. Anteriorly within a phytosaur jaw, towards the tip, you're going to get big, tall teeth like these. Posteriorly, at the back of the jaw, you usually get squatter teeth that are almost leaf-shaped. And this is because phytosaur jaws did different things. At the front of the jaw, it was probably a substantially better tool for catching prey, like grabbing fish. And at the back of the jaw, the teeth were more effective for slicing up what the phytosaur had caught. Now, phytosaurs also produce one of the other more common fossils you'll see in the Hayden Quarry, and those are osteoderms. Now, osteoderm is a term that means bone in the skin, and that's because the armor that a lot of these early reptiles, including the phytosaurs, had is made up of plates of bone that literally develop inside of the skin. This is an example of a relatively small specimen. You can see that rounded object embedded in this block of rock or matrix right here. Phytosaur osteoderms get quite a bit bigger than this. I'm thinking the largest is a little bit bigger in diameter than a softball, so that's some pretty big armor. But bits and pieces of these plates are literally everywhere because phytosaurs had armor on their backs, on their necks, on their arms, on their legs, on their tails. It was literally a feature just all over the animal. These were incredibly well-defended critters. But they weren't the only things living in the waterways in the Hayden Quarry. Something that we don't see as often, but is no less impressive than phytosaurs, are animals called metoposaurs. Now, unlike phytosaurs and dinosaurs and aedosaurs and virtually everything we talk about from sites in the Triassic period, metoposaurs are more closely related today to modern frogs and salamanders. They're giant amphibians. A metoposaur skull is honestly, it looks like a toothy toilet lid. I really wish I had one to show. Actually, I'll show one that's in the museum space here at the museum, the exhibit space, in a few days. But I wanted to share one of the very few pieces we have of metoposaur from the Hayden Quarry site. This disc-shaped object right here is a metoposaur vertebra, just a single portion of the vertebral column. And that's all we found, despite the size of this animal. This could easily be about the size of a coffee table, the whole thing. But for some reason, we don't find a lot of metoposaurs. And right now, there's not a great explanation for why that is. But we do have evidence that the phytosaurs shared the waters with some of the nastiest and biggest amphibians of all time. And now for one last fossil that's a little closer to my own heart, because this was a fossil that was a portion of my dissertation study. I studied the relationships of very small reptiles, and many of those specimens that I got to study were found here at the Hayden Quarry. One of the most amazing is this. I don't know exactly how well this is going to show up on camera, but this small object that you can see sandwiched between my thumb and my forefinger is called an ice cream cone bone. named because the lower portion has a narrow shaft, and then the upper portion is expanded into this big rounded thing that looks kind of like ice cream scoops. And for a long time, it was not clear what exactly these bones were. They're relatively common. It's not that hard to find an ice cream cone bone. But we never found them with the rest of the skeletons of these animals, so many hypotheses were created to try and figure out what exactly ice cream cone bones were. Were they a portion of the humerus, the upper arm bone of tiny amphibians? That was one idea. And, well, it turns out that's not the case. They're actually a portion of the wrist of all things. Now, most wrist bones in you, me, dinosaurs, other early reptiles, other mammals, amphibians, lots of things are really short, squat little bones that look more like pebbles than they do elongate shaft-like bones like the ones in your lower arm or your upper arm. But that's not the case in an animal called Drepanosaurus, a small creature about the size of a modern iguana that lived potentially in the trees above the waterways of the Hayden Quarry. And their arms are like no other animal's arms in the history of life on Earth. That bone in the wrist, the fact that it's so long and slender, means that Drepanosaurs actually had a hand that was just built in a way that nothing in the fossil record compares to. And it's only been recently that me and my colleagues here at the Hayden Quarry site were able to figure out that this even belonged to the wrist. So it's going to be a long process going forward to figure out how exactly that bone and the whole strange structure of this animal's hand allowed it to survive and thrive in this environment. And we wouldn't have known about any of this without these exceptional fossils coming out of the Hayden Quarry site. It's a lot of fun here. I thoroughly enjoy finding things. And one thing that's great is that professors, graduate students, postdoctoral researchers like myself, and undergraduates, college students, and even high schoolers all come together here. They all get in the dirt together. They all learn from each other. They all discover important things. It's a melting pot. And now that that sentimental thought is done, I'm Adam Pritchard. Thank you for listening. This is Pastime.